what lessons have you learned, or things that maybe you would do differently? Or
One big lesson is I mucked around for a long time with folks that I probably shouldn't have had. I used to be a teacher, and I think somebody has actually told me I gravitate too much towards sort of working with people, but that can actually be a bad thing. So, for example, I would have folks, there were folks in the company who they had some specific skill that I really needed, but I would catch them spinning things or lying or being disrespectful to a colleague. Usually I've been pretty tough on that. But I gave people too many passes, and I look back and, well, we were in around 2003, a friend of mine who was an Army colonel, since came out and joined Overstock when he retired, he sent me a paper from the Army called Be, Know, and Do. The U.S. Army had, their main competitor collapsed about 20 years ago, and they did some real soul searching and tried to figure out what they were about. And they came up with this doctrine on developing leadership, and they be, know, and do. And the idea is basically the knowing and the doing of being a soldier. They figure they can teach people in a year or something. But the most leverage for their time is in the be. It's in the character of the person. And we just started using this philosophy as a filter, and we just made it, or the first rule, the opening of our employee handbook for years has just been, if you ever get caught lying to a customer or the company, you're fired. It's that simple. So it's not that we're hang 'em high guys, but we've just realized, I realized I'd made too many compromises to get skill sets I wanted to deal, and I was dealing with people that I probably were, they were political. Basically, it comes down to, if you've ever seen office politics, that's what, and I've just realized, I realized that if we just get rid of all of them, just filter them out, don't accept any of it, what happens is it liberates all this energy that's sucked up in the corporation with people playing these games with each other. And if you just have this, if you just scrape all of that out and the people who bring it out, and if anyone comes in and shows any of that, you cut them. It's a wonderfully simple filter, because for one thing, it sort of narrows the field down to about 20% of humans or people you want to deal with. And then once they're all together, it's really liberating for the organizational energy, because no one's backstabbing each other and stuff like that.
So do you have any specific examples of someone that you've hired? And
well, sure. There were certainly in the early days of the company, you kind of, especially you work with what you can, and maybe you have lower standards. So maybe there was somebody in IT who was a kind of a fibber, and he would spin things politically, and in order to get you to do what he wanted you to do, he would give you information that he knew, and at least in my case, I couldn't check. I'm not a technologist. I had to take his word for things. And so, but it gradually, as I learned from developing relationships with other technologists, he wasn't always giving me the straight story. It was the truth is, what's funny, looking back, I let that slide. I caught him 2 or 3 times, confronted, and let it slide. And it's so silly. You just can't, when something is a character issue, when something is a character issue, you can't let it slide. If you just cut those people out, like I say, it's wonderfully liberating. I'll give you another example. Somebody who turns out he was going to the scorekeepers. In my view, the whole finance department, the accounting department, they're the scorekeepers. I'm like a soccer player out on the field playing. And it's not really right to go and harangue the scorekeepers. You want to make sure that they're keeping the books right and everything, but there shouldn't be people from, say, the business going and haranguing the scorekeepers. Well, what I've discovered eventually was that there was somebody, and when his numbers were coming in, they didn't look right and they were expenses, he would go, without my knowledge, he'd be going and telling, arguing with the CFO, well, this cost really belongs over here in this column, and it's not in my column and stuff. Well, that's horrible, and I didn't know he was doing that. And he was actually a good guy, but he was more concerned with how he looked on a piece of paper than in actually going and fixing what the problem was. Mm-hmm. So things like that, people who are, it's so corny.